And now for something slightly different. This is a Toshiba laptop I recently picked up because it has some interesting features. No, I'm not talking about the colorful reflective logo, even though it looks pretty cool as well. First, a look at the outside. On the left side we have a Kensington lock slot, infrared port and physical wireless switch, and a PCMCIA or card bus slot. That may already give you an idea on the age of this computer. On the front there's an SD card, microphone and headphone jacks, a wheel to adjust the volume, and of course the latch to open it. On the right we can see the special feature about this computer. The ability to shoot a pen. Because this computer has a tablet digitizer. And here there's a second Kensington lock slot. On the back there's actually something to look at. The power port, DC in 15 volts, center positive, 2 USB 2.0 ports, VGA port, indicator lights, modem jack and Ethernet jack, and a cooling vent. Let's open it up. And here it is. This is the Toshiba Portégé M200. It took me so long to get used to portege instead of the regular word protege. Now the regular word sounds weird to me. It has a 12-inch 4:3 aspect ratio screen with a Wacom digitizer, pretty standard keyboard. It's not that great to type on, but it's not awful. The bad thing about it is that it rearranges some keys. Like for example, the key that's supposed to be here is down here, and you might think it doesn't have a Windows key, but instead it has it up here. Also, this is an ISO keyboard layout, which is supposed to have an extra key over here, but it's been moved here. And the enter key is shorter, like on the ANSI keyboard layout. On the front there's a lock switch for the power button, which you have to slide, and some extra controls. This looks like a joystick, but it's actually 4 buttons, plus a center button, another programmable button here, and a Control-Alt-Delete button. And this little thing is the lid switch. If you press it, it thinks the lid is closed. This computer only has one speaker over here. It sounds pretty tinny, but laptops of this age never sounded good. As you probably noticed and might be eager to see, this computer can turn from a laptop into a tablet. The latch can move to the opposite side, and it can close up like this. And now, instead of a laptop, you have a tablet, which you can operate with the pen, which I just shot on the floor. So it works kind of like this, or like this if you're left-handed. And you can operate it with these buttons. This is its power supply. It has a non-grounded plug, and it's DC 15 volts 3 amps. We can try to turn it on now, but nothing happens. It does have a battery in it, but it's completely dead. Here is that battery, in fact. DC 10.8 volts, 4400 milliamp hours. And I've cracked it open to see the 6 cells inside, but at least one of them has to be dead, which could be changed if you desolder them and rewire them the correct way, but I haven't done it yet. And it's not that safe anyway, so I'm not sure if I'm able to do it. Here's the bottom, the information sticker, Toshiba Europe GmbH, assembled in China. There's the Windows XP Tablet Edition product key, caution saying PCs can warm up, and also a slot for a docking station, which I don't have. Here is where the RAM is, and here's where the hard drive is. And here's the battery, which can be locked. And although this computer did not come with one, over here there's a space where you can put an additional stylus, which is smaller than the normal one, but it could be used for emergencies if you lose the main one. After plugging it in, the battery light turns on, but after a while it turns off, so it's not able to charge. But now we can turn it on. And we can press escape to enter the BIOS setup. First it tells you to check the system, but pressing F1 takes you to the BIOS setup. It's pretty standard Toshiba BIOS. I updated it to the latest version, which is 1.80. One pretty cool thing is that you can turn off display stretch And anything that isn't the native resolution will be smaller, but will be reproduced pixel by pixel. But most things I do are at the native resolution, so I just keep it enabled so it fills the whole screen. Now we can exit and start up an OS. These are the options after the OSs I have installed. Debian and Windows 7. This computer is designed for Windows XP, but we'll choose the Windows 7 option. And we can see that I actually have Windows XP and 7. So let's start with XP, which is what this computer would have come with. And there's an on-screen keyboard because this is Windows XP Tablet PC Edition. I've restored it using a recovery disk I found online. Then I installed the unofficial Service Pack 4 and following updates using Legacy Update. And it comes by default with the Windows XP Silver Luna theme. But what it didn't have set by default is the large font sizes. I could control it with the normal touchpad, which is small but works okay for what it is. But that's not fun, so let's use the tablet pen, which has a button here for right click and another button here for the eraser when handwriting in certain applications. The way this pen works is that it moves the mouse cursor when you hover over the screen without touching it, and it clicks when you touch it. But here we right click and go to properties, and we can see the most special thing about this Portégé. Its screen resolution is 1400 by 1050, which is pretty high for a 12-inch screen. But by default, it had the normal font size, 96 dpi, which on this screen is actually pretty small. So I increased it to 120 dpi or 125%, and that's a little bit easier to use, and also set the icons to large. Here it is, Windows XP Tablet PC Edition 2005. Toshiba Portégé. It originally had 512 megabytes of RAM. It was just one stick of RAM, so I added another 1 gig stick I had, and that brought it up to 1.5 gigs. Support information is just for the USA, because this is a US version of the software I installed, but it's good enough. And there are Panda antivirus upgrades, but we'll do them later. It has 4 programmable on-screen buttons on the side, which you can see the preview of when hovering over them, like Start OneNote, Change Screen Resolution, Enable Shift Lock, which is not Caps Lock, and Control Lock. You can program these buttons in a different way, somewhere in the original Toshiba programs. The buttons can be different depending on the application you're using, or you can set it to unspecified application, which is the generic settings. So I could change these settings if I wanted, but I don't really use those buttons, so it doesn't really matter. So what have I been using this tablet for? Well, not much, although it does perform the best when using Windows XP, so I wanted to try something that would take advantage of this pen. So I've been trying some Nintendo DS games, using the No Cache GBA emulator. And sometimes it's difficult to double click. If you move the pen too much while double clicking, it doesn't work. This is only for demonstration purposes. If you want to emulate a video game, you ought to have a legal physical copy of it. So how does the Nintendo DS emulator work here? Pretty well, I'd say. It's pretty much like having a giant Nintendo 2DS that can't run Nintendo 3DS games. I chose this game because, of course, it's concentrated on touching the screen. So let's see if I can play a level here while holding the camera with the other hand. This one I don't know how to do. I've tried it several times and I have no clue how it works. And this one I have to blow on it. There's a microphone up there, which does work, but not with this emulator. So to use the microphone on Nintendo DS games here, I had to connect an external microphone. Oh, but I failed it anyway. Not doing too bad here, but of course it's not a super high score. And I failed. Damn it. But whatever, I was just trying it out. So that's this Nintendo DS game on this computer. Pretty playable. And so far this pen doesn't seem to scratch the screen, which is good. What about regular web browsing? I tried to use some half-modern web browsers for Windows XP, like New Moon and MyPal. Both are based on Firefox, but the one I found working better is MyPal, which is based on Firefox 68 ESR. But unfortunately, even though it does seem to perform pretty well, it's not usable for online videos at all. Even at 360p, it's just way too choppy. So maybe you could use it to like read news or something. I set it to use as the default browser, but it keeps asking for that. One site I did find that worked pretty well here is Scribble.io. It's a multiplayer drawing game, basically like Pictionary or Draw My Thing, if you remember that. You draw something and other people have to guess it, and you have to guess other people's drawings. It works pretty well on a tablet screen. Of course I get bored of it after a minute, but it works. So that's Windows XP on this Portégé M200. If you want to see more of the included programs here, let me know and I'll do another video on them. Here I can press Ctrl-Alt-Delete and it opens Task Manager. And normally the D-pad here, just try tapping on the screen with the finger, it doesn't work, you have to use the pen. Normally the D-pad is arrow keys and enter, so pretty standard. But now let's check out another OS. And now it's saying running shutdown scripts because, as you saw earlier, the antivirus had to update, and that's gonna take a really long time on this slow hard drive, but guess I'll have to wait. This computer originally had an 80 gigabyte hard drive. I replaced it with a 100 gigabyte hard drive to fit all the operating systems I wanted. It's an IDE hard drive, so getting an SSD for it is a little bit more difficult, and it wouldn't increase the performance as much as a SATA SSD on newer computers with SATA, so I'm just stuck with the hard drive here. But the hard drive I installed here came out of my dead Acer Aspire 1690 laptop, and I'll talk more about parts from that computer later. In touch with tomorrow. More like in touch with yesterday, since this computer is not that new anymore. Let's start up from Windows 7. So here it is, stuff we've already figured out from XP. And here it says pen input available. And yes, the Windows Experience Index is 1.0. All drivers are installed, but the graphics chip in this computer is so bad, it scores 1.0 anyway. It is an NVIDIA GeForce FX Go 5200, which has 32 megabytes of video RAM. You might notice that I don't have Aero turned on. If I turn it on, it appears to work for a second, but then the screen goes blank. You have to use either the basic theme or the classic theme. And just like in XP, I have everything set to 125% scaling. Just like my 1080p laptop, in fact. So here I've installed Office 2007. Probably should have installed 2010, but of course it works. And it's what I had more handy. We can select a pen to handwrite and it works. By holding the button, you can lasso and convert it to text in one of the menus here. OneNote is the only Office 2007 application which doesn't have the ribbon user interface, so that's pretty nice as well. But it's not the same as OneNote 2003. This computer is obviously thicker, heavier, and slower than an iPad, but it's a full-fledged computer running a full desktop operating system, and Office OneNote is pretty powerful. It has all the note-taking features one might want, and it saves automatically, so when you close it, it's already saved. This older version doesn't have support for saving your notes online, but they are in the Documents folder under OneNote Notebooks, and back up this folder. And while the performance in Windows 7 is overall about the same as XP, it is a little bit heavier weight than XP. Here I installed the latest version of Firefox ESR, and web browsing is even slower. Although again, if you have some patience, static web pages with just text will work okay. At least this is the newest version of Firefox. Windows 7 has been unsupported for over 3 years, so eventually Firefox is gonna drop support for it, but even then, the latest compatible version will be new enough. There's the input panel, which can be either a keyboard, handwriting each letter, and there should also be normal handwriting. And right now it's docked to the bottom, but we can undock it and it can be anywhere on the screen and resized, even the keyboard. What about Windows 8? Wouldn't Windows 8 work better on this tablet? Well, here's some sad news. This computer has an Intel Pentium M755. It's clocked at 2 GHz, single core, no hyper-threading, and the problem about it is that it doesn't support execute disable, also known as no execute, and that's required on Windows 8 or newer. So I can't install it. But then I realized something. This is not the only Intel Pentium M machine I've had. There's also my Acer Aspire 1690 laptop, which we've had since 2005 when it was brand new, and that's why it's in such horrible condition now. And that one came with an Intel Pentium M760 instead of 755. Unfortunately, it no longer works now because the integrated ATI graphics died. It could be fixed by reballing the GPU, but I don't have the skills to do that. But the CPU isn't broken, and it's the same generation as what this Toshiba uses. And back then you could replace CPUs in laptops. And over here, there's the replaceable CPU. I looked up how to swap the CPU in this Portégé. You have to remove the battery, the hard drive, and the RAM door, and then take out 19 screws at the bottom, unplug a fan that's under here, and then the whole bottom can come out and you'll have access to the CPU to replace it. So I replaced the 755 GPU that's in this computer with the 760 CPU that's in this computer. And did it work? Well, not quite. The computer booted up just fine and seemed to work. But I noticed that it was even slower than normal, and the fan was not running at all. The problem was that this CPU was locked at 600 megahertz and wouldn't go any higher. The problem with this Toshiba is that if you install a CPU that isn't officially supported by them, the clock speed is limited, maybe because they think it's dangerous to run it at full speed. There is a way to unlock the full CPU speed, and that's to patch the BIOS with some settings that teach it about the CPU that's installed. And so I've done a lot of research, looked through various archived forum posts, and found all the patches. But the problem is those patches are for older revisions of this M200, which came with an older generation Pentium M, and the patch was to support the newer Pentium M that this M200 already comes with, the 755. And that patch does not work with the 760. So even though I can install Windows 8 with the 760 in this computer, it's limited to 600 megahertz, which is not ideal, as you could guess. So unless someone can understand what the microcode patch does and modify it to support the 760, I can't install that CPU here. And if this hasn't been figured out already, I don't think it's ever going to be figured out, because this computer has been obsolete for years. So I just reinstalled the 755 CPU in here, and I'm stuck with older OSs, but it's running at full speed. And besides, Windows 8 is designed more for touchscreen with your finger, not with a pen. Although I still wanted to try it, so I wanted to do remote desktop. The problem is that my Windows 8 computer, the one I just recently did a few videos about, has the home version of Windows 8, so I can't do remote desktop to it. So I went looking for alternatives, and remembered one I used to use with my first generation iPad back when Windows 8 was brand new, Splashtop Personal. But unfortunately, even though it worked, it was very underwhelming. The Windows 8 gestures, which did work on that iPad running iOS 5, don't work on this Windows computer. And it still treats the tablet pen as a regular mouse, but at least I was able to try it. This video has turned out quite long, so I'm going to show Linux really quickly. Although there's not much to show, because the Linux distro I've installed here, Raspberry Pi OS, isn't quite working right. It's based on Debian 11, and I had no trouble installing it, but there are a few issues. First of all, the Wi-Fi isn't working. I go here and it says no wireless interfaces found. I connected via Ethernet and installed the wireless drivers, but it still doesn't work. Also, there's no mouse cursor, and it's not the fault of the tablet driver, because at first the tablet digitizer wasn't working either. However, I was able to get that to work by installing some drivers. And also, after updating everything, the launcher menu had disappeared, but I was able to bring it back by right-clicking, add remove panel items, adding an item called menu, moving it to the top so it's on the left, and setting the icon to RPI. Otherwise you wouldn't have been able to click it. Also notice that the title bars are missing. That's because after installing updates, it's no longer starting up the window manager. So we have to go to the terminal and run OpenBox. And now the mouse cursor is available, as well as the window title bars. But this OS is pretty lightweight. Of course, it's designed to run on a Raspberry Pi, and it comes with some useful programs. Mostly designed for Raspberry Pi, but they are available here too. It doesn't come with Firefox. You'd have to install that one manually, but no big deal. I should explore more Linux distributions here. For example, I've also tried Crunchbang++, which is another Debian-based Linux distribution with lightweight OpenBox window manager, but this is the one I have installed right now, and I'm probably going to get rid of it because of these issues. I also tried Puppy Linux from a USB flash drive, which was a bit of a feat to get working, but I'm going to have to explain it in a future video. It works at about the same speed as XP, And web performance is still the same because it's limited by the hardware, not by the software. So that's been this Toshiba Portégé M200. Pretty outdated device that can't do modern stuff, but it's still fun to tinker around with, and it has a pretty decent tablet digitizer. It could still be good for writing notes, or even drawing. There are some other things I could show here, but like I said, this video is pretty long, so that's it for now. Thank you for watching.